The next thing we're going to do is a panel discussion, and I have our three panelists joining us on screen right now. And I want to welcome each of them. And what we're going to do to start is we're going to go Charity, then Colleen, and then Virginia. I'll give you each the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself. So Charity, if you could go ahead and start us off. There we
Hello,
go.
everyone. Hi, I am Charity McDonald. So I help high achievers become big receivers without burnout. And I help people to elevate their career success journey. So essentially, I've supported over 300 high achieving professionals in the tech and talent space. And I'm excited to be here today. Thank you so much, Brenda, for having me. And I'm excited to join Virginia and Colleen to have this discussion around executive resume tips. I'm super excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charity, for being here. And next up, we have Virginia Franco. Virginia, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Virginia Franco. My company is Virginia Franco Resumes, not a very inventive name. I wrote resumes since the dawn of day when I first got out of college, didn't know anyone did it for a living. And in 2008, I changed that and launched my company. I help people that have sort of complicated stories to tell, get it down on paper. So any career marketing collateral you need, resume, LinkedIn, cover letter, I write it for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much and for that introduction and for joining us here today. And then last but not least on our panel today, we have Colleen Paulson. Hey, Colleen, would you like to
Yeah,
introduce yourself?
absolutely. Thanks again for having me, Brenda. So I actually have gotten to the career space in a odd sort of path. My undergrad is in engineering, and so I love the previous discussion about finding second careers because that's kind of been the story of my life. I've changed careers so many times I can't even tell you. But what I'm doing now is I write resumes and career coach and help folks to tell their stories. I especially work with Gen X and baby boomers, as you can tell by my company title, Ageless Careers. My goal is to help folks to tell their story in a compelling way. And so hopefully today we'll give you some tips so you can do that on your own as well.
Wonderful. And we are doing a panel discussion here today. So I'm going to kind of shift our view around like I've been doing here. This is the great thing about using StreamYard for technology. We get some extra bells and whistles that we don't get from inside Zoom. And we're here today talking about executive resume writing tips. And I want to invite our audience, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, you don't need to wait. Go ahead and put those into comments now. I'm going to start us off with a few questions for each person. We're going to kind of do a round robin on this. And I'm going to start with Charity. And this is a question. I think there's a lot of people that maybe haven't written a resume in 10 or 15 or 20 years. It's been a long time since they've gone through the job search. So what's your advice for them on, actually, this question is for Colleen. I apologize. I have my notes and I realize I have the wrong person. Colleen, hey, I don't make mistakes. I have learning experiences. And when you are experience rich, you quickly identify how to address those learning experiences and pivot, right? And that's what,
Exactly.
Colleen, the question is going to be for you, for folks that haven't done a resume in 10 or 15 or 20 years. How do they get started on that process?
Yeah, well, first, this is so common, and I don't want you to beat yourself up over it. A lot of times folks just haven't needed a resume. They've been, working for the same company for a long time, and it's just not necessary. So I want to make the process super easy for you. One place you want to start is just looking at job descriptions. So what kind of skills and keywords are important? What should you be thinking about? Next, if you have access to your performance reviews, grab them. Pull out key points going back to those job descriptions. What skills and keywords are important. Pull that information out. Anywhere that you can quantify results, do it. If you can estimate, that's awesome. But just do the best you can. And my final thing I like to, kind of encourage folks to do is just a quick brain dump. So I'm better with pen and paper still. I guess that just shows my age a little bit. But for me, sometimes it's easier to step away from the computer and kind of just take some time to jot down notes. And so, don't be afraid to just sit down 5 or 10 minutes every day and just think through, what were my key strengths? What impacts did I really deliver? Maybe you could look at your calendar and see what meetings, you were part of, what projects you helped to, deliver results with. So those are just a few quick and easy things you can do to get started.
Great. And I'll ask Charity first and then Virginia, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, actually, as someone that has supported majority, I would say, those who are in career transition, so those who are impacted by the tech layoffs, also a lot of talent professionals, they have had the same career for 20, sometimes 30 years, and it can be very overwhelming, like how to figure out how to put things together. So it is really important kind of to echo what was said earlier of making sure you take time to not overwhelm yourself, because I think most people, they're overwhelmed by the entire process and they think they have to just totally throw everything away and start all the way from the beginning. And it's really about making sure that you're refreshing your story so that that is something that will resonate with the people who are viewing your resume, and making sure that it makes sense to the people that are looking at it, and also that you're able to articulate your value, your unique value proposition in a way that's easy to understand.
All right, awesome. And Virginia, did you want to add anything to that?
The only thing that I have found helpful when you're talking about roles that are, 10, 15 years back, that you haven't thought about in a really long time, is to sort of role by role ask yourself, when I left there, what was I proudest of? Sometimes it's a skill you learn. Sometimes it's that you navigated a really tricky company dynamic. Sometimes it's a project you led. But 9 times out of 10, when you ask yourself that question, you start to see common themes, which what I do is I say store those away, and that will form your brand that you list at the very top. But also, that's often what is the first bullet that I like to lead off with, below the job title. That often the first bullet's what people are skimming when they don't have much time, and so you sort of want to hit them over the head with something impactful.
That's a great tip. I love that on there. All right, ladies, great start to the panel discussion here. We're going to change gears now, and I'm going to ask a question of Charity. And let me just do this. So, and actually, this is the ironic thing, Charity. I got an email from someone this morning asking the very question that we're looking at, which is, if I'm changing careers, maybe I'm looking to either make a lateral move and get out of this job and do something else, or change jobs entirely. What should I do on my resume? So what advice do you have for them?
I love that, because actually Jen spoke on it really eloquently, but briefly. So it is so important that that you know how to articulate your value, and also you want to make sure you have those transferable skills, that you know how to identify them and know what is in demand in the market. So it actually lines up with what you're looking to do. So that is very important when you're looking at job descriptions. That can kind of be a guideline to let you know what would those keywords would be to focus on.
Yeah, and transferable skills is such an important part too. So to start us off, I think it's a great tip, for people that are thinking about changing industries, because you don't have to be what you are for your entire career. If you realize you're not happy and you want to change and you want to pivot, I think it's perfectly fine to do so. Colleen, did you want to add anything to that?
The only other piece I would add is, I love another term called skill stacking. So it basically just fits hand in hand with transferable skills. But, if you think about it, just through your career, you're going to just keep stacking those skills. And so, at the end of the day, you end up with all of these awesome skills that you can use in a lot of different directions. Instead of viewing that as like, oh, I'm changing again, like use that as your superpower. Like, yeah, I'm stacking skills and I'm going to go and, I'm going to go and make this change again. So, again, just keep it simple, but, stacking skills is just another way to think about it.
Great. And Virginia, how about you? Anything to add to that? Changing industries advice you'd give? You're muted right now, so I'll ask you to unmute before you start. And it's actually a really good practice when you're speaking on a panel to mute until you're talking. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. The other add I would have is to be mindful of the different lingo that happens from industry to industry. I encourage people to have had informational interviews, maybe go on YouTube, listen to podcasts related to the industry that you are considering jumping into, or the role you're jumping into, because the verbiage often is different, and you want to weave that into your resume and into your LinkedIn profile so that you are showing the reader that you can walk the walk and talk the talk.
I love that, using the language. Very good. So we're going to shift gears. We're going to now kind of just do one question per person, because then I want to move into some audience questions. So the next question, actually, Virginia, I'm going to keep you up on screen. So we're going to talk about mistakes that people make, and, call them learning experiences, call them mistakes, whatever you want. But what would you say are the two biggest mistakes people make when writing an executive resume?
The first mistake is they don't write with the end goal in mind. Having the more targeted you can be, the better. If you try to cast too wide a net, your documents sort of become diluted. And how you write for a finance resume is different than what you write for sales. So have your end goal in mind, because that will determine how you brand yourself, what parts of your experience you pull out, all of it. The second thing that's really informed how I write and has made my writing evolve is that we need to consider that people are skimming these on screens. Printing happens on resumes, but usually not until a little later down the road. Mobile reading is increasingly an issue. And I think studies show that LinkedIn is half, if not more, of our users use mobile. We have a hard time digesting dense text on screens, and we tend to sort of jump all over the place. Our eyes are like squirrels. We move all over. And so you have to take that into account by keeping, with dense text, you keep your bullets and your paragraphs to 2 to 3 lines. You add white space in between your bullets versus cramming a bunch together. You don't have 8 bullets in a row without having sort of a breaking them into subcategories. That facilitates an online skim read. And recognizing that people jump around a lot. When I'm writing a sentence, I put the most powerful part of whatever I'm trying to say at the beginning, because that sort of ADD reader might not ever get to the end.
I love that. Great tip. All right, awesome. So I'm going to change this up here and go to Charity next with our next question. We're going to kind of do like a faster Q&A here, because we want to get to our audience questions as well. So we're going to do one person per question here. And our next question here, actually, I'm sorry, I did your names both start with a C, so I have in my notes C. Colleen, I'm sorry about that. So what about early career experiences? Keep in the resume or omit? What do you think?
Yeah, so it's the same answer as it is for a lot of things in career development, and it just really depends, right? So, sometimes you'll hear from coaches that they want you to cut everything from the past 15 years on, and that's not the strategy. It's a hard and fast rule. I don't recommend that. I think it really depends on the experience you're talking about, right? So, I had a client a few years ago, and her early career experience was with GE. She was managing a team, like a $40 million budget, direct reports, you name it. And so when we start working together, I'm like, hey, what were you doing for the year 2000? And she's like, oh yeah, I managed this awesome team. It's not on the resume because someone told her not to put it there. So I think it's, Virginia, when she talked about, writing with the end goal in mind, that's where this falls as well. If that experience is relevant to that goal, then please find a way to put it. There are different strategies, career notes that we can put things in without years. So you don't want to, make that the total focus of your resume, but if it's relevant, you can find a way to put it in without looking older.
That's a good point. Yeah, keep it in, or maybe not, but really great advice on there. So, all right, Charity, next question. I hear this from people. They're submitting application upon it. I call it the black hole of job search, job upon job upon job upon job. And it's just soul sucking and soul crushing. By the way, if you hate the black hole of job search, go into chat right now and type in the word hate, because I hate it. That's what I'll do too. Let's get that negative energy off of us there. But let's say, Charity, they've submitted to over 200 jobs. They're not getting any responses. What's your advice?
Yeah, this is actually a very common problem with several people that I've supported, where they said they applied to 200, 300 jobs. They got like one interview or a couple of interviews that didn't go anywhere. And it's not a good feeling. There are many different factors as to why that happens. And I want people to be aware of, there is something called ATS, which is the applicant tracking system. So that is actually how a lot of applications and resumes are filtered. And in that process, you have to understand, we have more people looking for jobs more than ever before. So in the past, we may have had, you could just apply to a few jobs and that's fine. But where we're at right now is you have people in transition, people who are working but looking, people who are laid off, people who will be laid off, right? And you have all those factors. So there's a higher volume of applicants. And also we have to consider other factors, like the time that you submit your resume. Also, if you're following up after you have applied, if you're aware of who the hiring manager or the recruiter is for that position. And also if you're making sure you have the keywords that match the language has been stated earlier. So if you have your resume, making sure that it matches the language that is in the job description, that can support you. But with the volume of applications, what you really want to do is make sure you're having human connections and that you're getting your resume in front of people who are decision makers.
I love that's solid advice. And you don't have to rely upon that black hole of the job search and the
Right.
ATS and getting you through. And I've even heard, I heard a story once where somebody submitted a job through Indeed and they got an app, a confirmation received message. And then somehow they got into contact with the recruiter there. And the recruiter went through the resumes and they did not get it. So someplace between them submitting it to Indeed and them picking up the resumes, the baton was dropped essentially. So if they hadn't made that connection, then they wouldn't have happened. So making the human connection, I think, is such a great point that you've made on there. So thank you so much for that, Charity. All right, Virginia, we're going to give one final question for our panelists here, and then we're going to move out to our audience. So what would you say is the biggest challenge faced by executives in writing their resumes?
To me, it is how to best convey their achievements. They either go one way where they list just the responsibilities, or they list a bunch of numbers and data because they've been told they have to do that. What I encourage people to do, and what I do, is I think about each job like an HGTV before and after story. And so, I tell people to think about what did things look like when you first got to that role? And then at the end, what did things look like? What did things look like when you were leaving or as you were getting ready to leave? And then what was your role in moving the needle from point A to point B? And then the last question is, why was that achievement important? Maybe it's to the customer, maybe it's to the team, maybe it's to the company. But those 4 questions will help you to craft a series of bullets that they're impactful, but they show the why, they show the they've got data, and then they've got context. And also allows you to, instead of having 19 bullets related to your job, usually it boils it down to 5 to 8.
Okay, great. And do you have any thoughts on email address on resume? Is it okay to use an AOL or like a Hotmail or a dated email, or should we get a contemporary email? What do you think?
Look, if you're 22, nobody's going to worry about you having an AOL email. I don't know that that's a thing, but you want to make yourself appear timeless. Nobody needs to know if we're 35 or 85. AOL is one of those things that people make judgments calls on. The good thing for people that hate the idea of having 7 emails is make a work email, forward it to your old AOL just for the purposes of your job search.
I like that. And I've even advised some people like, yeah, just create a Gmail that's just for your job search and just use it for your job search, and even, update your resume with that, your LinkedIn profile. So everything's kind of pointing to that. So
you can even
really
make a Google
advice.
Voice number that way too, if you don't want your personal cell going out there.
That's a great point too. Google Voice number. You can use that as a generic, like a landing box there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to open this up for audience discussion. So if you do have any questions, please drop them into the comments now. If I do see your first name, your full name on there, I'm not going to bring your question up on screen because I do want to make sure that I'm protecting your privacy, because if you're here today, there's a good chance you're working but looking. And while this is not broadcast publicly, we will be recording, and I want to make sure I'm protecting your privacy on here. So I do see a couple questions that are coming inside chat here, and I'm going to read this one out loud. Can you do old school and walk your resume in to pass the resume, or even mail it in? So let's address that. Any of the panelists, if you have a thought on that, can you walk your resume and go into an employer, walk into the lobby and hand it to the receptionist, or submit it by mail, or do we need to do it online? Any thoughts?
Obviously, it depends on the role, right? My best friend from high school, she was looking, she was a mom who had stayed at home for 20 years, and she wanted to work at her local spa. So she literally walked in with her resume and made that face-to-face contact and landed the job, right? So for that type of role, that totally makes sense. For a more professional executive role, I don't know that is really the answer. The more effective way to do it is try to find someone that that you can email it to. I mean, I think we get stuck on this magic bullet, right? It doesn't matter if it's printed out or if it's, if you're emailing it to someone. It's more about who you're getting it in front of and getting it in front of the right people. So it's figuring out who those decision makers are, and and reaching out to them, whether it's LinkedIn, email, however that is.
Yeah,
Good.
I agree with that. I mean, if it's a smaller one store place, mom and pop shop, they probably don't get a ton of mail, and it would be exciting if the path less traveled. But in a big Fortune 100 company, good luck on finding the best way to get mail to an executive. So,
Good point in there. Charity, did you want to add something too? Go ahead.
Yes. So I appreciate this question, and I do think that what is most effective from my work with over 300 people is emailing the contacts that are attached to that job. On LinkedIn, there is a way for you to sometimes see the person that is the hiring manager, and sometimes there's a way to look through posts as a way to find opportunities. So you'll literally see the person who made the post available, and you could inbox them, but my preference is to actually get a direct connection with them, and actually getting firsthand, I can say, getting the email, it moves the process along way faster, probably even more so than application. You've already applied, reach out. It's not hurting to email, that resume, because that's actually a way that most people are not engaging in the job search process. They're mostly just submitting their application through the applicant tracking system, which is ATS, and they're kind of landing in that black hole, as you mentioned earlier, Brenda. So that's what I say.
The black hole. I got a lot of comments when I said, "Tell me how much you hate the black hole." A lot of people jumping on there. We don't like it, and somebody was like dislike strongly. They were being very. A lot of questions are coming in. I'm just going to highlight a few, and I will be sharing your questions with the panelists afterwards. So if we don't get to everyone, I want to let you know I'll be sharing it with all of the panelists. 1 or 2 page resume, and this is an executive resume. Any thoughts? Do we need to keep it to 1 page? Can we go to 2 pages? What do you think?
you want me to start?
Go ahead. Anyone, if you have any thoughts on this, it's open.
The answer 90% of the time is it depends, but my rule of thumb is less than 5 years, or if you've been doing sort of the same role for most of your life, but with different companies, 1 page probably would work. After that, 2 pages, I think, does the job. With super senior execs or people that need like an addendum, maybe they are in mergers and acquisitions and they want to list their deals, or they're a writer and they need to showcase some of their portfolio, then I'm okay going into a 3rd page.
Colleen or Charity, any thoughts on that? 1 or 2 page or more?
No, Virginia's right on. I mean, that's exactly, you just want to be mindful. Like if you have that 10-page resume, like no one's reading all of that. So you really, getting to 2, like Virginia said, max 3 if you have, board roles or something additional to add, but otherwise you don't want to overload the reader. And 1 page, again, is just for early career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Go ahead, Charity.
I was just going to say, piggybacking on what both Virginia and Colleen said, there is a distinction to be made, though, for industry. So that's great that was highlighted by Virginia, because it does make a difference. If someone's in like higher education and they're a professor, you can have like a 10-page, a CV, right? But if it's professional, and I'm thinking, executives, senior managers, you have at least, considerable amount of experience. I think 2 pages is ideal for someone that's at that level, that is experience rich, and it's kind of a sweet spot, but it really varies on the industry. So 1 page if you don't have as much experience, or you just want to highlight, a specific aspect of your experience.
Okay, great. And follow up, and I'm going to direct this question to you, Charity, because someone mentioned, you said there's a time to submit a resume. What about time of day, number of days after posting? And Charity, we'll start with you, and then I'll see if the other panelists want to add to that.
Yeah, so time, this is very interesting, because it is nuanced. It's really not a one size fit all with that. But what I will say is that from the research, it takes about 44 days from the time that a job is posted to the time it's closed. That's on average. And with that being said, the time it takes from someone to submit their application or receive an application from the hiring manager's side, it could be like 2 weeks on average by the time that you're getting an interview. So with that being said, I think the timing, if you see a job has been posted longer than a month, that may be a sign that if you are submitting, they may already have been moving forward in the process with interviews. Now, it's not a guarantee, but when you are at the front of that, the front or the end, depending on when they are looking at the resumes, that will make a distinction. And in my experience of supporting over 300 professionals recently, that does make a difference. And if you hear back or not, even if that means a rejection, someone can actually articulate to you that they've moved forward, right? When you're making an early submission. So ideally it would be, within the first week, if possible, the first day. There is a way that you can do that by clicking the bell on LinkedIn and following a company or following a position so that you're aware of when the job is first opened up, and you can receive leads as well through LinkedIn. And I'm sure this is also possible on other career search platforms, job search platforms as well.
Okay, great. Well, what I'd like to do is start to wind us down here for the day. And I want to give each of our panelists the opportunity just to talk about if people are interested in working with you. Because I like to think about these events as like the free sample. Like if you go to Costco today, you walk around the store and you can try the cheese and the crackers and the different things. And if you are interested in working with any of these individuals, I want to give each of them the chance to talk about their services. So Virginia, we'll start with you. Anything you'd like to share?
Well, I did share for everyone a list of a document that I share with my clients, which is scripts to help people connect with people they know, connect with people they don't know, following up with recruiters after your resume and LinkedIn are written. That you've shared my LinkedIn, my website's virginiafrancoresumes.com. If I can't work with you or the timing doesn't work, I used to be president of the National Resume Writers Association, and I can point you to lots of different writers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Virginia, for joining us and for sharing that information. All right, we'll go next to Colleen. And again, same question for you. If people are interested in working with you, can you remind us what are the services that you offer?
Right. So I offer resume writing and LinkedIn profiles and, some career coaching. I recommend that even if you don't want to work with me, just, connect with me on LinkedIn. I write, I post every day, and I try to post tips for Gen Xers and baby boomers. I know, we have particular challenges. And so I talk a lot about ageism. So feel free to, connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn. My website is agelesscareers.com. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help however I can.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'll ask you ladies as well, if you want to drop any of those links or resources inside the chat, feel free. And I'm going to remind everyone who's watching us here today that in addition to getting a link with the playbacks to watch these sessions again, if you'd like, I'm also going to be emailing you a list of any resources or links that the speakers have offered here today. So I got you. I'll be sending those out through email. All right, Charity, to round us off, can you remind us if people are interested in working with you, what are the services that you offer?
Thank you so much. And people certainly can go to my LinkedIn. I do post content pretty consistently almost every day. So there's tons of resources there. I am offering one-on-one career clarity sessions. They're called Clarity with Charity sessions. So that can be helpful. And also I have some availability to work with me in March for the Elite Career Accelerator. And I do have some opportunities for people to connect with me regarding learning more about how to go from stressed to success in your career search. So I am doing some podcast views and some speaking. So you just have to follow me. All the information is there. I also have an experience rich resume giveaway, but you do have to follow my profile to receive that. So just go to my profile on LinkedIn and everything will pretty much be there.
Awesome. And thank you so much, ladies. This has been such a great session here today.